has created some of the most iconic origin stories ever told, but they're also the ones responsible for the gin gold and water fumes thing. It's all about balance. Some DC origin stories we love, and some we still don't understand. Up first is Hawkman. Now, we have been gifted an explanation for his numerous backstories and never-ending lore, and that is because he is simply one guy that just keeps getting reincarnated. But before this was established, good luck. The character was just a little hard to keep up with, to the point where people started making detailed guides on his timeline. Then there was also the fact that two Hawkman characters merged into one during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. There was just a lot of people handling the character, and they didn't always follow each other's lead. Now, with the latest backstory, everything makes at least a little bit more sense. The Phantom Stranger has led a lot of lives. Literally, one is canon now, but it's only a matter of time before someone else messes with his history. His current origin in the New 52 story is that he was Judas, betrayer of Jesus, and that makes him one of the greatest sinners that ever lived. Past origins include him as a fallen angel who didn't pick a side during the Heavenly War. Another is that he was Isaac from the Bible story, but not exactly the same. This time his son died because King Herod was looking for Jesus, and now Isaac hates Jesus and later tortured him. Another is that he was spared during biblical times but didn't want to be, but the angels didn't want to let him in heaven, so he has to walk the earth alone forever. And the fourth is that he was actually one of the last remaining parts of our previous universe. At the final curtain, he approaches those studying the end and then passes part of himself onto a new person, so when the universe is reborn, they also get a Phantom Stranger. In addition to his many backstories, it's also up in the air as to whether or not he is a villain. To me, it sounds like he started out as a villain, he did betray Jesus a few times, but later realized the error of his ways and became a sort of hero. Lots of people just choose to ignore many New 52 storylines, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see what sticks for this guy. Phantom Stranger is now connected to a villain called Question, but that wasn't always the case. Question at one point was a character that was thought to be a supernatural power, thought to be because it was never made clear. One of the only things that is now considered canon about him is that he has committed a crime bad enough to be considered one of the world's greatest sinners, part of the trio of sin with Phantom. We never know his name. Before being turned into Question, the guy was obsessed with power and having his name feared by all. As his punishment, he got his face taken away and he can no longer remember himself or his name. This was introduced in the New 52. Before that, he was just the alter ego of Vic Sage, but then Flashpoint caused them to separate and even have brand new different histories. This version of him isn't that bad, he just really wants to know who he is. I am hopeful for a name reveal, whether he's another universe version of an existing villain or a real historical figure. Supergirl's horse, Comet, was originally a centaur in ancient Greece that longed to be a human, and one day he ended up saving the sorceress Circe, and she told him that she would give him any reward. He of course asked to be human. So how did he end up instead as Comet the horse? Well, she made the potion to turn him human, but she also made one that would turn him into a horse and accidentally gave him the wrong drink. The comic is like she went away for days to make this potion he had wished for, and then she came out with two. Why did she make two? He wished to be a man. Why didn't you just make the potion that would turn him into a man? Or if you had to make both, why didn't you just throw out the one that would turn him into a horse? You didn't need that one. It doesn't make any sense. And you spent all that time making the potions and there's no antidote? This whole thing never needed to happen. If she had never made the horse version of the potion, then I wouldn't have to live with the knowledge that Supergirl dated her horse, because that did happen when Byron eventually did become human down the line. Worm and Velvet are a duo of a worm and his metahuman, maybe. There is a duo of boy and worm. The boy is called Worm and the worm is named Velvet. Velvet likely created this human kid because he can create humanoid constructs capable of independent thoughts and actions. Likely he did this because he was supposed to be a spy for Peacemaker. The kid could stay in one place while the worm roams around collecting info. The worm also lives in the body's stomach. The boy and worm are separate things. The boy doesn't survive the end of the comic he was featured in, but Velvet the worm does and joins Doom Patrol, accompanying them on later missions. So yeah, this all happened in Unstoppable Doom Patrol from 2023, which is not exactly a comic comic known for being normal, if that makes any of this easier to digest. Duela Dent's origin is confusing because she wants it to be. She has claimed to be the daughter of the Joker, Catwoman, the Riddler, the Penguin, Scarecrow, and Two-Face. She was first introduced as the Joker's daughter, but her last name is Dent, which belongs to Harvey Dent, or Two-Face. So now she is known as Two-Face's daughter for a while, until Robin figures out she's not the right age to be his daughter. She agrees and then just disappears. She appeared in the Teen Titans comic series, and she was planned to be revealed as a time traveler that gets reality warped one too many times and is driven insane. Unfortunately, we never got to see this, as the comics were cancelled. Technically, Duela doesn't want to be a villain, but she does fight a lot of heroes and lies all the time. She was later revealed to actually legit be the daughter of another universe Joker and Three-Face, a female variation of Two-Face. Is this a lie? You can literally never know what's real in these universes anymore, and turns out, neither can Duela. It's suggested that because her mind was warped so much that every time she switches Earth, her consciousness switches slightly as well, which is why she named so many different parents. She was just confused. Boss Glitter was the main antagonist of the forgotten DC series about the Heckler. He's a ruthless mob boss with a little bit of flair. He uses old Mardi Gras masks to hide his face and controls the city by planting a bunch of lieutenants that manage different parts of it for him. The problem is the Heckler keeps defeating all those lieutenants and throwing them in jail, so naturally Boss Glitter wants the Heckler to heckle no more. When his lieutenants fail, Boss Glitter takes the matters into his own hands and sends a bouquet of flowers to Heckler, who is in the hospital with a bomb in them. The Heckler does still survive though, and we don't hear from Boss Glitter anymore because the comics had bad sales, so the series was cancelled. So we never actually found out what his deal was, what is with the Mardi Gras masks. Why is Boss Glitter your mob boss name? We'll never know, and it does haunt me. Jay Garrick becoming the fastest man alive because he knocked over some water and inhaled the fumes? How does that make sense? The Flash character Jay Garrick was first introduced in late 1939 in Flash Comics 1. He was a brilliant student that had been working with hard water for years, specifically studying the gases emanating from it. One late night, while experimenting with separating the water's elements, Jay, the brilliant student, had the brilliant idea to smoke in the lab. He knocked over the hard water fume glass, and when he tried to clean it up, he fainted from exposure and woke up the fastest man alive. Through my research, I came across the debate that suggested that whoever was coming up with the original origin story way back when might have confused hard water and heavy water. Hard water is water with a higher mineral or dissolved metal content, and it's not particularly dangerous. Heavy water is used in nuclear power plants, and that makes it seem super mysterious. Maybe they thought because hard water technically has more minerals, it would just make you better. I don't know. Either way, becoming the fastest man alive because you inhaled water fumes is a very odd choice. Elongated Man also debuted in a Flash comic, and his original origin is also a weird science story. Ralph Dibny was fascinated by a particularly stretchy man he had seen at the circus as a child and was determined to make himself stretchy. He discovered that the performer liked drinking this soda called Gin Gold and figured, well, that must be the cause of his flexibility. So he started to experiment with the drink. He figured out that the main ingredient was a little-known tropical fruit, and that was what gave the performer his stretchy power. By isolating the essence of this mystery fruit and drinking that, Ralph became Elongated Man. Now don't worry, it's not all this mystery tropical fruit. There is an element of willpower too. These Golden Age origin stories might not make any sense, but they sure are entertaining. And finally, the Joker is one of the most iconic villains of all time, so it's no wonder why so many people want to leave their mark on his story. Unfortunately, that makes for a pretty messed up, twisted, confusing history. Speaking of which, I would love to know y'all's thoughts on the newest lore from Joker 2. Anyways, there are a few constants with the Joker's story, but often he ends up in acid and comes out looking the way he does. Who he was before, and even during the swim, is kind of up to whoever is holding the pen. In 1951's Detective Comics 168, the Joker had been the Red Hood, also a criminal, and one night he decided to rob a factory, escaping by swimming through the pool of chemical wastes. He thought he would come out normal, I guess, didn't, and to his delight, he figured out his new look was actually quite scary, and then used that to his advantage. In later versions, like The Killing Joke in 1988, he's a failing comedian, and once again finds himself in the chemical factory, but this time he gets scared into the acid. In Batman the Animated Series, he was a hired slayer first. It kind of really depends on what the writers want to do. Marvel has created origin stories stories that have become ingrained in pop culture. Everybody knows them. But they have also come up with some origins that have caused more confusion than anything else, like how someone can be their own grandfather. Here are just a few Marvel origins we still don't understand, or they just give me a massive headache. In the MCU, Vision's origin is honestly pretty easy to follow. Can't say the same for whatever is happening in the comics. In the comics, Vision came from the original Human Torch, aka the first artificial man ever created, and Ultron was responsible for constructing Vision. It was later discovered that the Human Torch Ultron got his hands on wasn't the original, it was a temporal replica that was generated using the Forever Crystal. Because of this, Vision wouldn't activate, and Ultron was forced to bring in the OG Human Torch's creator into the mix, forcing him to fix Vision. The brain of Wonder Man was used to do that, so he is the Human Torch and Wonder Man, while also not truly being either, so there you go. Next is the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, because they just can't seem to catch a break. So when it comes to their origins, and no matter which one you look at, there are still a million questions. So for the longest time, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were the children of Magneto. His wife Magda had been pregnant with twins when she disappeared, and it's not hard to believe that Magneto, one of the most powerful mutants alive, would be the father of a powerful witch and speedster. Now, that origin has been retconned, something many Marvel readers hate, but even if it wasn't, there are still some questions I need answered. Like, why were Magda's twins delivered by an evolved cow? Why was that the choice? Now that this origin has been retconned, who and where are the twins that Magda gave birth to? The current story with Wanda and Pietro is that they were the children of Natalia, the sister of the couple that ended up caring for the twins. The High Evolutionary kidnapped the twins from this couple and experimented on them, making them appear as regular mutants. Then they were returned. This is still pretty new for an origin. For decades, Wanda and Pietro were Magneto's kids, so it's taking some getting used to. At least Magneto still sees them as his children, even if it's not by blood. Northstar's life is so wild, it's almost like they used a random job generator and just like ran with it. The guy has joined the circus, a Quebec separatist group, Alpha Flight, which is Canada's super team, and he's an Olympic skiing champion. He is also a twin. However, he didn't find that out until much later in life, because when they were children, their parents got into a crash and passed on. They were separated, and Northstar ended up being adopted, only for his adoptive parents to also pass in an accident. And at that point, I would personally start asking questions. Someone has to have it out for you. In adulthood, the twins were reunited, and it was so nice, but then they were contacted by Loki, who told them that they were part elf, so they spent some time thinking that they were elves. It wasn't true though. Loki lied, and that's that. Forever Man is maybe the first mutant to ever exist, and yet he doesn't seem to have made any mark on the Marvel fandom. Don't get me wrong, Forever Man has done a lot of stuff, but for a guy that has had since the beginning of time, he really hasn't amassed a large following. Forever Man, whose mutant power is regeneration. If he passes, he just comes back to life as a child, allegedly with no memories of his past lives. However, that might not be true anymore. He claims to have had 10,000 names in his lifetime. Apparently, his memories were reawakened after a particularly grueling passing. Then he met the Avengers, and when they couldn't help him stop his mutant ability, he flew himself into the sun. But that only caused him to be stuck in a constant resurrection cycle until he exploded back to Earth as a kid again, and we don't really know if he remembers who he is after that point, because we don't really see him again. I believe his last appearance was Avengers 218 from 1982. Is he still around? He should be. As long as the Earth spins, he's around. We actually don't really know where he even came from. My favorite thing he ever did though, in one of his lifetimes, he accidentally almost made the entire United States country disappear when he tried erasing Captain America from existence. Have you ever wanted to read about an elf with lots of firepower and almost no consistent backstory? Then boy, do I have the character for you. His name is Melf, M-E-L-F, but his alias is Elf with a weapon, and that's it. That's what he is. It seems that he is part of a bigger group, elves with weapons. We don't know where he's from officially, but the elves are supposed to be agents for the Tribunals, a force dedicated to preserving order in the universe. Melf was a weird guy and would go around offing random people, and he was never caught. He was only stopped because he was run over by a truck. His nephew, Ralph, then took up his undisclosed mission. However, if he was working for the Tribunals, then and maybe his victims weren't random, and wouldn't that be a great and easy to follow explanation? So of course that was retconned. Doctor Strange claims that the tribunals were fake, and we are once again back to wondering why the elves even exist. Retcons and identity theft have led to quite a confusing backstory for Zorn. Zorn's debut was in New X-Men Annual 2001, and at the end he was revealed to be Magneto in disguise. Only he wasn't. Later it was revealed that it was actually Zorn, pretending to be Magneto, pretending to be Zorn. And Zorn is being controlled by someone named Sublime to foster mutant hatred in the world. At the end of the Magneto identity theft fight, Zorn dies, but not really. His body is done for, but his essence was still around through his connection to Sublime, so he came back. The creator of Zorn in 2001 always intended for Zorn to be Magneto, actually Magneto, so when you read that story, there are hints to it the whole way through. It was because the editors liked Zorn's character and Marvel wanted Magneto alive so they could use him again that the confusing aspect of his story was born. Zorn also has a twin brother with very similar powers to him, so sometimes Zorn returns, but it's Zorn 2. What is it with Marvel and twins? Up next, Cable, or Nathan Summers, because what's even going on there? He is the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, but his birth was kind of orchestrated by Mr. Sinister after he discovered that the two X-Men would produce a super powerful offspring if given the chance. Sinister wanted to use this offspring to defeat Apocalypse, but then he ran into a bit of a problem when Jean seemingly passed away. She was actually just at the bottom of Jamaica Bay, so he created a clone of her, Madeline Pryor. She was the one who married Scott and had a kid with him, and then somehow, after that is when everything really hit the fan. Jean Grey appeared alive, Scott left his family, little Cable was kidnapped, and all records of him were erased from existence. A psi bond was created between him and his sister, Rachel Summers, from an alternate reality, and then we had that huge battle in New York where Madeline tried using all the littles to open up a portal. It didn't work. Then Nathan was kidnapped again and infected with a virus that couldn't be cured in the present, so obviously he was sent 2,000 years into the future. And then in the future he was cloned because they were worried they couldn't cure him after all. Apocalypse claimed to be that clone and kidnapped, I guess, baby him to raise to be a host body when he needs it. Cable just has all the spots on the Marvel bingo filled out. Time travel, cloned, super parents that were also cloned, evil self, kidnapped, and that is only the beginning. Being introduced to Eric the Red, and particularly his choice of outfit, is not something I will ever forget, because what is going on there? Scott Summers created this fake identity, Eric the Red, so he could infiltrate a villain organization, and that's fair, that makes sense, but then Marvel made a real Eric the Red that isn't Cyclops, but he wears the same outfit, and the outfits are very specific, so how did Scott even get it? There seems to be no correlation between the two other than the identity name, so whatever that means. Kang is mine, and now it seems the MCU's biggest headache. One thing seems to generally stay the same for him. Every version of Kang starts out as Nathaniel Richards. Where Nathaniel came from though, well, we have options. There was a Nathaniel from Earth 616 that brought peace to Earth 6311 when he traveled there. This made him a big deal. He was known as the legendary benefactor, but he wasn't the Nathaniel native to that planet, so another Nathaniel was eventually born. This Nathaniel was maybe descended from the great benefactor himself or Doctor Doom. This Nathaniel's history was messed up by another him, causing him to be a good guy for a while. Nathaniel grows up and is bored, so he travels back in time to Earth 616's ancient Egypt to be king. Eventually, he tries to return home, but is caught in a time storm and transported ahead to the 40th century, Earth 6311. The future is a mess. They are at war, and the people have regressed into barbarians. Nathaniel has found the perfect group to conquer. This is the first time he takes on the name Kang the Conqueror. He conquers Earth 6311, that galaxy, and then tries to attack Earth 616. He wanted more power, but there was also a historical record that said that eventually a celestial Madonna was going to give birth to the most powerful entity ever, and Kang wanted to be their dad. This was the confusing origin of one version of Kang, but generally considered to be the base Kang, kind of. There are a lot of things in the Marvel Universe that give me headaches, but Shatterstar's origin is really something special. The man is somehow the son and the father of fellow X-Men Longshot. How does that happen? Well, Shatterstar was sent back in time to the Mojoverse, which we will cover in a second because that is all so weird, but he was sent back in time. He was experimented on in the past, and his DNA was used to create Longshot, so therefore, he is Longshot's father. Years down the road, Longshot and Dazzler have a baby. baby, and that baby was Shatterstar. And guess what? Shatterstar helped deliver that baby. That makes Shatterstar Longshot's father and son and his own grandfather and midwife. Because Marvel can't seem to relax, they decided that Longshot and Dazzler would forget the pregnancy ever happened, and Shatterstar was launched 100 years into the future. The guy lived in Mojo World, a realm where TV basically controls everything. Shatterstar lived here for a long time, competing in arenas. It's where he learned to become a warrior. Then he escaped to Earth, where he was a founding member of X-Force, and then at one point we find out that Shatterstar was maybe split in half or just had a twin. His name was Benjamin Russell, and he was in a coma the minute his powers manifested, but looked exactly like Shatterstar and was his other half. The two were eventually combined, which left Shatterstar feeling whole again. So that's him, but what do you think?
Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, Susan Storm, and her brother Johnny were forever changed during an experimental spaceflight that exposed them to cosmic rays, giving them all superhuman powers and abilities. So to backtrack for history, during his time in college, Reed shared his dreams of space exploration with his friend Ben, and in turn, Ben pledged to fly any spaceship created by Reed. Susan was introduced to Reed when he was a house guest of her aunt, and through Sue, Richards met her younger brother Johnny. So, fast forward years later, Reed secured government financing for a new spaceship that could have potentially opened up interstellar travel for humanity. However, the government pulled its funding from the project shortly before Reed completed his work. Well, desperate to test the ship before it was dismantled, Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny broke into the official facility and launched an unauthorized flight. The mission was seemingly a success, but then the ship's shield failed to protect them from a massive dose of cosmic radiation and crashed back to Earth. Everybody survived, but then Reed found his body had taken on elastic properties that allowed him to change his size and length. Susan gained the ability to turn invisible, Johnny got control over fire, and then Ben's enhanced strength and durability turned his skin and body into a rock-like situation, which kind of robbed him of the ability to pass as a human. Despite the sudden turn of events, the quartet realized the potential of their powers, chose to become a team, quickly becoming media sensations and celebrities. Does any of that make sense? Cause like we got 4 different kinds of powers from the same source? Nope, absolutely not. Do we still love them? Somehow. Cloud is without a doubt the proud owner of the strangest origin story the comic industry has ever created. Okay, well maybe the strangest Marvel story. This is in no small part because the name Cloud is quite literal, as Cloud started out as a space cloud, or a nebula, given human form and sent to Earth by Cubic, a cosmic cube. The only not completely surreal part of Cloud's origin story is that her presence on Earth immediately caused a car crash. Significantly weirder is that in trying to heal those killed in the car crash, Cloud would instead take on one of their forms and gain amnesia, a fact that those who bore witness to her debut undoubtedly envy. She would later be brainwashed into believing she was human and given false memories of having human parents who died, as well as making her believe that a Russian secret agent was her sister. Although Cloud would eventually discover her true nature, and likely one of the wildest identity plot twists of all time, it's difficult to decide whether her fake or real identity is weirder, because both are kind of surreal in their own right. The Red Bee's origin story is so ridiculous that it's kind of hard to believe that he was ever taken seriously as a superhero. Richard Rayleigh's reliance on a trained bee named Michael, whom he kept in a compartment in his belt buckle, is not exactly a recipe for success when it comes to crime fighting. It's hard to imagine how a bee could be useful in combat, even if trained. But despite the absurdity of his origin story, the Red Bee made a few appearances on the page of comic books, proving that even the dumbest of ideas can find a following. However, I think it's safe to say that the Red Bee's place in superhero history is more of a curiosity than a classic. Chuck Tane, also known as Bouncing Boy, has one of comic book history's most ridiculous origins. So after drinking a super serum, he could inflate and bounce like a bouncy ball. And while this ability might seem amusing and visually entertaining, it's kinda not really practical to fight crime with and save lives. But hey, despite the impracticality of his power, he's become a beloved character among fans of Legion of Superheroes. Allegedly. His cheerful personality and unwavering loyalty to his team have made him a unique and endearing presence. And while he might not be the strongest character out there, I guess he kind of proves that sometimes a little bit of humor and fun can go a long way in creating something memorable. You let me know in the comments what you think. It isn't particularly uncommon for a superhero to gain their powers thanks to brain damage. Like Cyclops, he struggles with controlling his eye beams thanks to stress and injury from growing up. But Flaming Carrot is another story entirely. In a move that breaks the fourth wall, as well as the most likable West Coast Avenger, Gwenpool, Flaming Carrot became a superhero after reading thousands of comics. And I think it was 5,000, which okay, I don't seem that crazy, but tight, so this decision caused him to have brain damage, leading the man to put on a carrot mask, set fire to the top of it, and set about with a tool belt that helps him along the way. Oh, and in case he needs to swim, don't worry, he's always wearing flippers. He's also got this ability to enter a state of Zen stupidity, allowing him to face dangers without hesitation or worry. It's absurd. I think it is kind of funny, and it kind of tackles some of the strange conventions of the hero genre, but like, why? Squirrel Girl's origin story is definitely up there with the more unusual ones. Her birth with a squirrel tail and the power to communicate with squirrels might seem strange, but it's become essential to her character's appeal. Her quirky personality and unique abilities have made her a fan favorite. Despite her seemingly silly origins, she's proven to be a noteworthy hero, defeating some of Marvel's most powerful villains. We're talking Dr. Doom and Thanos. Her triumphs have demonstrated that sometimes it's not the powers that make the superhero, but their ingenuity and determination. So sure, while her origins might be unconventional, her success as a hero is kind of a testament to the fact that anything's possible in the comic book world, and in the real world too. Armless Tiger Man's origin story is both absurd and offensive. Gustav Hertz was a circus performer who, lost his arms in a tiger attack, and then get this folks, he gained the ability to grow tiger arms from his shoulders. And the backstory kind of relies on the ableist notion that people with disabilities can only be heroic if they possess extraordinary abilities. And this offensive trope kind of reduces folks with disabilities to one-dimensional characters, who are only seen as inspiring because of their physical differences. Also, the idea of growing tiger arms from one's shoulders is both illogical and ridiculous. It's kind of hard to imagine how such an ability could be useful in any meaningful way, and it really only makes them this poorly thought out stereotype. The bizarre nature of Amy Winston, superhero alias Amethyst, kind of rests on one question. If you were a magical princess, when would you want your parents to tell you? Well, Amethyst only finds out the answer to this question when her mom takes her through a magical portal on her 17th birthday, at which point you'd think she'd have found a spare minute to tell her own daughter what was about to happen. The first edition of Amethyst's origin is really strange. It's very weird, starting with a normal family celebrating their offspring's birthday, and ending with a terrifying orc kidnapping her via an interdimensional portal, all within the span of roughly 3 pages, making it pretty wild. More importantly, while in the newer Prime Earth version, Amethyst is 17 years old, the older edition has her as a 13-year-old who takes on the appearance of a grown woman when in her superhero form, which raises some more questions. Are we being creepy, or are we Shazam knockoffs? After being hit by a cable car, Nightman was struck by the jump effect, which is a power granted by a moon-based alien species and given extraordinary abilities. So now he's got that night vision, he's got an ability to sense malevolent thoughts, so he's out to take on the world's wrongs. But there's something to be said for a character with a backstory so confusing. The moon-based alien species that gave him his powers, they're never fully explored. It'd be like, I don't know, if Superman failed to question his grandparents about Krypton. We're missing a key element, folks. Even though Nightman is from one of Marvel's strangest alternate universes, his odd history could be fun if you accept that you're never gonna get the answers that you kind of need. Color Kid's origin story isn't super duper impressive. Ulu Vac gained the ability to change the color of any object, but only once, which kind of makes for an underwhelming superpower that's hard for anybody to see being of much use in any fight against supervillains. And what makes his origin story even more ridiculous? He was a member of the Legion of Superheroes, a team of intergalactic superheroes who fought against various threats to the universe. I struggle to imagine how changing the color of an object, just once, would have been much help in such a big situation, an important situation like that.
Number 10, The Creeper. Jack Ryder was a super outspoken TV news guy in Gotham City. Now on TV, he's the host of a show where he tries to stir the pot to get everyone talking about topics like super advanced medical science and nanotech. Ryder was doing some investigating into some new tech called nanocell therapy created by one Dr. Vincent Yates. He discovered an experimental mixture which enabled the body to regenerate from practically any injury of any kind. Unfortunately though, Jack tried to steal Yates' tech at the same time as a group of mobsters, and so to keep the tech safe, the good old doctor injected his last unstable sample of nanocells into Jack Ryder. Then, right after that happens, the gangsters grant Jack a one-way ticket to the afterlife and blow his head off. Now, most of us, well, we'd be lights out and game over by that, but thanks to the nanocells reacting with his body's chemistry, Jack is completely resurrected with the ability to turn into the Creeper. This bright yellow-skinned, green-haired madman with hypnotic intimidation powers, a pain-inducing laugh, and superhuman agility, strength, speed, stamina, and enhanced reflexes. Number 9. Ultra Boy. Ultra Boy, or as he is known in his civilian guise, Joe-Na, possesses many of the same powers as Superboy, including superhuman speed, strength, flight, stamina, breath, vision, and invulnerability, which he gained from being swallowed by a massive space energy beast, which is essentially a giant space whale, hence the biblical Jonah name. While he was inside the energy beast's stomach, the radiation inside altered Jonah to give him superpowers. The only issue with Jonah, and it's a big one, is that he can only use one power at a time. This means that if he wants to fly through space at super speed, he must wear a spacesuit to survive in the cold vacuum, or when using his power for super strength, he is not invulnerable and can therefore get tired, feel muscular pain, or even pull a muscle. Jonah can switch these abilities almost instantly, but he needs to make the conscious choice to do so, which honestly sounds exhausting. Number 8. Jack-o'-lantern. The son of a poor farmer, Daniel Cormack was raised in Ireland. Now, like most Irish people, Daniel came into contact with the Irish fairy people, some of whom he managed to become good pals with. It turns out that the fairies actually really liked Daniel because Maeve, the fairy queen, granted him a magical lantern as repayment for his friendship to the fairies. The power of this lantern is pretty interesting. It slowly waxes until its peak at midnight and then slowly wanes until it's at its weakest at noon. With his lantern, Jack is able to fly, teleport himself or others, generate blasts of energy, create illusions, generate fog, change the size of enemies, and bind them inside the lantern. And he can also become superhumanly strong and durable. Using the lantern, he took up the identity of Jack-o'-lantern and became Ireland's premier superhero, eventually joining the Global Guardians, even getting 2 successors in the form of Marvin Noronha and eventually Liam McHugh. Number 7. The Red Bee. The Red Bee from DC Comics comes from a time in comic books and the superhero genre when superheroes were really just pulp vigilantes who had some kind of really minor edge over the criminals they would be thwarting. Rick Raleigh was the assistant to the district attorney, and with this look at the criminal justice system, he grew tired of seeing criminals escape justice either through technicalities or because the court system was just too slow. Growing fed up with this, Rick decided he would create a costumed identity to bring criminals to justice. But as a normal, intelligent guy with a flawless moral compass and a decent right hook, he didn't really have an edge over those he was facing. Enter Michael. Michael was a trained bee, like the insect that Rick would keep in his belt buckle. Michael was a unique kind of bee though. As we know, bees don't survive for too long after they sting someone, and luckily, Michael had the advantage of being able to sting people multiple times. Michael, coupled with Rick's fists and other equipment, would be the bane of villains everywhere, and thus, the Red Bee was born. Number 6. Cloud. There's really no other way to say this. Marvel's Cloud is a sentient nebula hundreds of thousands of years away from becoming a star. That's actually what they are. Cloud began to notice stars disappearing from the space surrounding it, which caused the nebula to feel fear for some reason. And because of that, a newly emerged cosmic cube known as Cubic was attracted to Cloud and came to their aid. Now, hoping that the Earth's heroes could somehow do something to help, Cloud made their way to our planet only to inadvertently cause a young couple, Carol Faber and Danny Milligan, to get distracted while driving and crash their car. When Cloud attempted to help the couple, they tried to enter into their minds but were instead bombarded with the unique human psyche. For some reason, this transformed Cloud into a replica of Carol, with no memories of their former self. This made Cloud the perfect target for the Secret Empire, which is a cult-like offshoot of Hydra that then weaponized Cloud to suit their own nefarious ends before she was eventually taken on to the Defenders team. Number 5. Elongated Man. When Ralph Dibny was a tiny little Ralph Dibny, he saw a contortionist at a carnival and he was instantly down to be able to be like that guy. Everyone had their thing, and for Ralph, his thing was trying to figure out how someone could twist and fold their body into all sorts of shapes like a contortionist could. Obsessed with learning the secrets of the contortionists, for years and years Ralph figured out that all the contortionists he observed drank the same drink. Not some crazy formula, not some kind of tea, but it was actually a popular soft drink known as Gingold. Now, Ralph knew for the most part that it was just a coincidence that they all drank the same drink, but that doesn't mean he wasn't gonna bet everything he had on it. Ralph literally taught himself chemistry, and he used his newly found chemistry skills to create a super concentrated extract from the fruit that was the basis and heart for Gingold, the Gingo fruit. And what do you know? The super concentrated extract allowed him to make any part of his body stretch to a ridiculous degree. What's that, I hear you say? Why yes, this does make no sense. Number 4. Flex Mentallo. The Doom Patrol is a unique team to say the least. Their whole thing is that their powers are weird enough that they were shunned, made fun of, etc, etc, and so they pulled together to make their own team. A bunch of them could make this list, but the one member who I think deserves to make it onto this list is Flex Mentallo. He first appeared in Doom Patrol Volume 2, number 35 in 1990, and was essentially created by another metahuman by the name of Wallace Sage. Wallace has the ability to take any drawing he makes and turn it into real life. With that power, he created Flex. Now, Flex himself was given the mysterious and kind of hilarious power of muscle mystery, which allows him to alter reality by flexing different muscles. For example, flexing his scalenus minimus, Flex has the ability to survive in the vacuum of space for an extended amount of time. His other powers include enhanced senses, mind control, precognition, reality alteration, superhuman durability, superhuman strength, and telepathy, all by flexing different muscles. Number 3. Puck. The Alpha Flight member known as Puck was at one point literally just a little person who pushed himself to turn his body into an almost perfect physical specimen, able to lift hundreds of pounds and fight as well as his fellow Alpha Flighters. But this was before his Alpha Flight days. He had tons of adventures and his pretty basic but mysterious backstory added to his likability. Now the dumb part came much later on when it was revealed that Puck was actually much older than he seemed and was not actually born as a little person. Apparently, Puck used to be 7 feet tall and was a mercenary and adventurer who was born near the start of the 20th century. As a merc, he was hired to steal the Black Blade of Baghdad, and he totally did it, but then it unleashed an ancient magical being known as Black Razor. In order to defeat Black Razor, Puck sucked him into his own body, becoming immortal in the process, but also losing half of his height and being trapped in the form of a little person. Why? I don't know. Number 2. Whizzer. Bob Frank and his father Emil were traveling through Africa when they both unfortunately came down with an extremely deadly illness. Now, needing a transfusion in order to save their lives, Emil made it a mission to find someone who would be willing to help them and to save Bob's life. Apparently, there was absolutely no one who could help them out. But then, to make matters so much more worse, Bob also got bitten by a very deadly cobra. Bob was not having a good go of things here, and when that happened, a mongoose then just happened to show up and it introduced that snake to the afterlife. Now of course, this must have been a sign, and Emil had the bright idea to use this mongoose for the blood transfusion to save his own son's life. Don't worry about how a mongoose and a human are completely different, he was going to save his son's life. Not only did the mongoose DNA running through his son's veins save his life, but naturally, this had the added benefit of allowing Bob to now run at super speed? Apparently though, this was just common information, as Emil explained it as nonchalantly as pouring a cup of tea. Later on, it would be revealed that Frank had natural powers that were just jump-started by the addition of the mongoose DNA, but of course, that's only after they realized how that makes no sense. And in at number 1 today is Leezle Pon. The Green Lantern Corps, actually every Lantern Corps really, has members of all different shapes and sizes. But what utterly baffles me personally is knowing that the Green Lanterns have a super intelligent, justice-seeking smallpox virus on their roster. Assigned to Sector 119, Leezle Pon wasn't really able to join the other Lanterns in team meetings on the Green Lantern world because this Lantern risked infecting all the others. Leezle Pon's partner in Sector 119 was called Remus. Now, I say was because Remus was a fatal victim of Despotellis, another sentient virus and also part of the Yellow Lantern Corps, the Sinestro Corps. Despotellis infected 85% of the planets in Sector 119, which caused the passing of Leezle's partner. Despotellis then went on to infect Guy Gardner. Now, wanting revenge for the attack on her sector and the loss of Remus, Leezle Pon was injected into Guy Gardner and then did battle with Despotellis inside of Guy Gardner, defeating and capturing the Yellow Lantern virus, who Leezle brought back to Oa for a Green Lantern doctor to work on a vaccine to wipe out Despotellis for good. And that's all I know about this character.
At number 10 is Calendar Man. So you think you've heard all the villain origin stories, huh? Well, have you ever met Julian Day, the Calendar Man? This guy's obsession with time and dates would make even the most punctual person seem laid back. He'd celebrate holidays like nobody's business, but his calendar fixation led to some serious mental unraveling. You see, he dabbled in a life of crime with a unique twist, pulling off heists tied to specific calendar dates. Batman, being the Caped Crusader he is, couldn't resist, and the two engaged in an ongoing dance of cat and mouse. But here's the twist: after some stints in Arkham Asylum, Julian somehow became a useful asset to Batman. He helped him crack the case of the Holiday Unaliver, a case that the Calendar Man himself was initially the prime suspect for. Nowadays, Julian's obsession has evolved into metahuman abilities, as he ages and regenerates with the seasons. Winter brings wrinkles, and spring, well, it's like a youth serum, turning him into a newer, younger version of himself. Just goes to show even the weirdest obsessions can lead to some unexpected supervillain stories. At number 9 is Ice Cream. So if you haven't heard of him, Ice Cream is a minor villain who only appeared in the Obnoxio the Clown #1 X-Men comic. Ice Cream is a mutant supervillain with the power to turn his entire body into any flavor of ice cream. That's right. In his ice cream form, he can change his shape, melting into a puddle to slip under a door. His costume is made of unstable molecules, so it can turn into ice cream along with him and then change back. His origin story is that people laughed at him because of his ridiculous powers, and he blamed the X-Men because their incredible powers made his look ridiculous in comparison. So he made a plan to destroy them so that everyone would respect him. He also made ice cream puns like lickety banana split and easy as pie a la mode, and at one point he even said curses like a typical cartoon villain. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Rainbow Rider. Roy G. Bivolo, aka the Rainbow Rider, is not your typical comic book villain. Growing up, Roy had dreams of becoming a famous artist, but there's a catch. He was colorblind. While other kids were out playing, Roy spent his time perfecting his craft, only to be met with disdain for his art due to his inability to see the true beauty of colors. But Roy's story takes an even darker turn. His father, an optometrist and optical tech expert, vowed to find a way to cure his son's condition. Tragically, he passed away before he could fulfill that promise. But before he could, Roy's father handed him a pair of goggles that he had been developing. These goggles had the power to emit solid rainbow-colored light beams, which kind of misses the target a little bit. Fueled by bitterness over his failed artistic pursuits and his father's unfulfilled promise, Roy chose a different path. He embarked on a life of crime, using the goggles to create chaos and establish himself as the Rainbow Raider. At number 7 is Shaggy Man. No, it's not Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, although I wish it was. This guy was actually a freaky creation of Dr. Andrew Zagarian, who was just trying to find a substitute for lost human tissue. He whipped up something called plast alloy and decided to beef it up with a dash of salamander DNA. But here's where everything goes south for science. A big ol' human error occurred, and this artificial body he was working on turned into a hulking hairy giant he cleverly named the Shaggy Man. No PhD required to see where this is going. The Shaggy Man goes bonkers, attacking anything that moves. Plus, it can regrow any body part that it loses thanks to its salamander DNA. The Doctor was in way over his head and had to call in the Justice League for backup. But even then, those superheroes couldn't handle this monstrosity. But leave it to the Flash to come up with a genius solution. He tells the Doctor to create another Shaggy Man, and then they toss these immortal beasts into a deep pit where they're stuck battling each other for all eternity. At number 6 is Victoria Murdoch. The villainess known as the Asbestos Lady had a burning grudge against the original Human Torch. To face the fiery hero, she decided to deck herself out in a fireproof asbestos suit, making her nearly invincible to the Human Torch. But she craved more power and tried to strong-arm her scientist friend Fred Raymond into enhancing her asbestos abilities. The Torch kept a close eye on Raymond's home and thwarted her plans. Fueled by revenge, the Asbestos Lady caused a train wreck to off the Raymonds, but their son Thomas survived unscathed. She tracked his fire-resistant talents as he joined a circus act, but again, the Torch foiled her plans by melting her boots to the road. Then in 1947, her twin brother Murdoch met his end at the hands of the Torch and Toro. Asbestos Lady resolved to wipe them out, as she lured them into traps, inducing an asbestos-lined net, but they survived. But despite her escape attempts and alliances with villains, the Asbestos Lady ended up behind bars, vowing vengeance. However, she eventually succumbed to mesothelioma, probably due to all that asbestos exposure. At number 5 is Fred Myers, the Boomerang Man. Have you ever heard of a villain who started off as a pro baseball player? No? Well, let me introduce you to Boomerang, aka Fred Myers. He's not your typical bad guy. You see, back in the day, he was swinging for the fences in the baseball world. But then he got suspended for taking bribes. That's right, he went from hitting home runs to hitting people. But wait, it gets crazier. A criminal organization came knocking on his door and Fred joined the dark side as an assassin. He worked for some big names like Justin Hammer, the Kingpin, the Masters of Evil, and even the Sinister 12. Then he had a brief stint as a hero during the Marvel Universe Civil War, going by the name Outback. But of course he couldn't resist the allure of the criminal life for long. Now he's a part of the Thunderbolts, a team of reformed supervillains. Boomerang's not just any run-of-the-mill bad guy either. He's a sharpshooter with a lethal arsenal of customized boomerangs, from explosives to tear gas. So the next time you see a baseball game, remember that not all athletes stick to playing fair. At number 4 is Leapfrog. An unusual and relatively obscure villain in the Marvel Universe, offers not one but 2 intriguing origin stories. First, we have Vincent Petilio, a struggling inventor who decided to take matters into his own hands. Frustrated with his lack of success, he crafted a frog-like suit equipped with electric leaping coils. Sadly for him, Daredevil foiled his criminal aspirations not once but twice, and later Iron Man joined the party, ensuring Petilio's stint in jail. Fast forward to post-prison life, where financial hardship followed the tragic loss of Petilio's wife to cancer. His son Eugene took up the mantle as Frogman, causing some father-son superhero drama. But then when the villainous White Rabbit resurfaced, Petilio went undercover to help the police, leading to a unique family showdown against the White Rabbit. Next, let's talk about Buford Lang, a bad dad who stumbled into a leapfrog costume. His encounter with Daredevil on a rooftop took a shocking twist involving his own son Timmy, who didn't want to see Daredevil hurt. This electrifying turn of events led to Lang's unfortunate demise until he was eventually resurrected, of course. Comic books. At number 3, meet the Sultan of Sauce, the Condiment King. If you've seen the Lego Batman movie or the Harley Quinn animated series, you've encountered this master of salvary savagery. In the Lego movie spin-off, he joined the Joker's gang attacking Gotham, and in Harley Quinn, he's Poison Ivy's Kite Man rival. Yup, the Condiment King is a real DC villain, though he's not exactly keeping Batman up at night. Batman the Animated Series introduced him where he fell under Joker's control, who made him wield condiments as weapons. Before his spicy turn, he was Buddy Sandler, a comedian brainwashed by the Joker to threaten people with ketchup and mustard at a fancy restaurant. In the comics, his real name was Michelle Mayo, a name that doesn't exactly command respect. But in Birds of Prey number 37, he concocted a poison that sent Blue Beetle, Black Canary, and Robin into anaphylactic shock. Deliciously evil, am I right? At number 2, Clock King's comic history is a curious tale of obscurity turned cool. See, back in the 1960s, he made his debut in the world's finest comics number 111, a crook who really loved clocks. And well, that's about it. Over the next 2 decades, he only popped up a couple more times in some of the world's finest backup stories. One of those tried to give him a backup story, but it was really only a half-hearted attempt at best. However, the 1980s came to the rescue with the creation of the Injustice Gang. This group of largely forgotten villains, formed for laughs in the Justice League comics, breathed new life into characters like Clock King. But the real turning point for him was Batman the Animated Series. See, they took this obscure clock-loving crook and turned him into something awesome. The updated designs and new motivations struck a chord with fans, and suddenly, the Clock King was vogue. At number 1 is Polka Dot Man. His mom was a scientist obsessed with superheroes, and she decided to take a leap into the unknown. See, she worked at Star Labs, and in her quest to turn her kids into caped crusaders, she exposed Abner to an interdimensional virus. Now what happened next is something like out of a horror sci-fi flick. See, Abner's skin starts sprouting these weird glowing polka dots and lumps, and it's not a fashion statement. Some of his siblings, they didn't make it. They paid the price for their mom's experiments, but Abner, well, he survived, but at a cost. He had to expel those polka dots twice daily just to prevent the virus from munching on his insides. Now what's more is because of his mom's twisted experiments, Abner got PTSD. He sees his mom's face in every person he looks at, like an unending horror show in his head. And while he might not be too fond of unaliving people, he's got a twisted way to motivate himself. See, he imagines his targets as his own mother. Eventually he ended up behind bars in Belle Reve Penitentiary, but he would eventually go on to be recruited by Amanda Waller as part of a new squad, and I'm sure you all know the rest.
In at 10, Matter Eater Lad. In his first appearance, Matter Eater Lad reveals his origins, sharing that the people of Bismol developed the unique ability to eat all matter as a means of survival when microbes rendered their food inedible. This adaptation granted them incredible strength and durability in his teeth and jaws, enabling him to bite and chew through even the toughest of substances, similar to Superboy Mon-El's abilities. Matter Eater Lad's mother is named Mitz Kem, and his father is Rahl, who surprisingly uses Tenzil's LSH stipend to buy groceries, as depicted in the Hapless Hero in Action Comics number 381, despite both being Bismolians. There was actually a person with this power in real life, if you can believe it. This dude would eat light bulbs and bolts, and actually ended up getting eating a whole bike and a whole plane, from what I can remember. He was called Mr. Eats All if you want to look him up. In at 9, Flaming Carrot. The legend of the Flaming Carrot begins with a man who, after reading an astonishing 5,000 comics in one sitting to win a bet, suffered brain damage and emerged as the enigmatic hero known as the Flaming Carrot. Somehow. Living in Palookaville, a neighborhood in Iron City, the Carrot has faced off against multiple alien invasions. He's thwarted a communist takeover, encountered flying dead dogs, battled the Man in the Moon, outwitted death itself, and even confronted a cloned army of Hitlers. Devoid of conventional superpowers, the Flaming Carrot relies on unwavering determination, incredible luck, and a unique brand of absurdity to triumph over his adversaries. Despite experiencing death and resurrection, including a detour in limbo, the Carrot's escapades persist. As a founding member of the Mystery Men, a group of blue-collared superheroes, Flaming Carrot's legacy has endured. Their story was later adapted into the 1999 film Mystery Men and a brief spin-off comic series, but Flaming Carrot doesn't actually appear in that movie. Characters like Mr. Furious, the Shoveler, and Dr. Heller do though, leaving the hero's origins and legend to thrive in their own extraordinary universe. In at 8, Batman Beyond. Amanda Waller, director of Project Cadmus, needed a new Batman to continue the fight for justice, and saw genetic engineering as the solution. She created Project Batman Beyond by using Bruce Wayne's DNA to rewrite a male human's reproductive material, and found a couple in Gotham City with a psychological profile nearly identical to Bruce's parents, the McGinnises. Warren McGinnis was secretly injected with the nanotech solution, and a year later, Terry was born, with half of his mother's genetic material and half of Bruce's. To complete Terry's decision to become a crime fighter, Amanda planned to have that same trauma that inspired Bruce to become Batman to happen to Terry. After a night at the theater watching The Grey Ghost Strikes, Amanda and the Phantasm go to Terry's parents to kill them. However, the Phantasm refuses to go along with the plan and allows the McGinnises to escape and be unaware of what might have happened. Terry later on did actually become the new Batman, but hey, having your dad's genetic material rewritten with a crime fighter, yeah, I'm gonna say that that's pretty weird. And at 7, the Cloud. After joining the Defenders, Cloud struggled with understanding their true origins. Complicating matters, they developed feelings for their teammate Moondragon, who was subtly using telepathic signals to manipulate others. Cloud's confusion led them to shapeshift into Danny Milligan's form, hoping to be a more suitable form for Moondragon, but this adds to the mystery surrounding Cloud's identity and just life in general because they are a freaking cloud that will shapeshift into naked humans. In time, Cloud regained their complete memories and led the Defenders on a space mission to prevent the Star Thief from harming their family, and with their memories restored, Cloud embraced their rightful place in the cosmos, finding clarity and purpose once again. Most recently, now preferring the pronoun they, Cloud reappeared as a member of Doctor Strange's new Defenders. While the Defenders were in the fourth cosmos, Cloud stayed behind and journeyed into the mystery. Cloud then encountered a new version of the Defenders as they were traveling through the mystery, specifically the land of couldn't be, shouldn't be. And at 6, the Creeper. Jack Ryder, a former resident of Gotham City, finds himself fired from his political talk show when he fearlessly criticized his sponsors and refused to back down. Recognizing his detective skills, Chief of Network Security Bill Brain offered Ryder a job as an investigator. Ryder's first assignment involved locating Dr. Yats, a scientist captured by a local gangster, Angel Devlin, who is collaborating with communist powers. To infiltrate Devlin's masquerade party, Ryder seeks a disguise at a costume shop where he improvises a unique outfit with yellow lights, green trunks, red gloves and boots, with yellow makeup, a green wig. It's really weird. He even has like a sheepskin rug as a cape. Ryder completes his bold ensemble, and then at the party he confronts Devlin's henchmen and rescues Dr. Yats, but not without being injured. In a twisted turn of fate though, Dr. Yats injects Ryder with a chemical serum that enhances his healing, strength, and stamina, but also implants a tiny device under his skin capable of rearranging molecular structures and rendering his suit basically invisible until needed. But the comic explanation is that he can switch between his skin and his costume that he wore to the party at will, which is all kinds of strange. Halfway through into number 5, Ultra Boy. Jonah, known as Ultra Boy and hailing from the planet of Rimbor, is a member of the Legion of Superheroes with a wide array of powers, but he can only use one of them at a time due to his physical limitations. Originally, Joe was part of a gang called the Emerald Dragons on the seedy world of Rimbor. While traveling in his space speedster, not that kind of speedster, he was swallowed by an energy blast, a monstrous whale-like creature that devoured any life form in its path. Luckily, the Galactic Patrol cruiser saved him by cutting open the creature with a ray, but the radiation charged Joe's body, granting him incredible abilities like X-ray vision and more. Embracing his newfound powers, he became Ultra Boy and joined law enforcement efforts, leading him to be recommended for the Legion of Superheroes. At some point, Joe was thrown back in time to the 20th century and teamed up with Superboy, merging their minds to become Reflecto, but eventually he returned to the 30th century and continued his adventures as Ultra Boy. And for Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze's parents were famous motorcycle stars alongside Craig Crash Simpson, who became like a father figure to Johnny after their death. Taught by Crash, Johnny was expected to carry on the legacy, but he resisted, disappointing his girlfriend Roxanne. When Crash fell terminally ill, Johnny delved into the occult in desperation to save him. He unwittingly summoned Mephisto, whom he struck a deal with to cure Crash's cancer in exchange for his eternal servitude in hell. Despite the deal though, Crash died shortly after, attempting a dangerous stunt. Grieving and seeking to honor his foster father, Johnny attempted the same stunt, but nearly lost his soul to Mephisto, and then he becomes Ghost Rider. Getting close to the end in number 3, Fat Man the Human Flying Saucer. Van Crawford, a wealthy owner of hobby shops and a hobby expert, stumbled upon a crashed flying saucer one day. To show gratitude for his assistance, the shape-shifting alien inside granted Van a drink that tasted like a chocolate milkshake, but was actually the substance used by the alien's race to transform into saucers. Now, possessing that same power, Van adopted the persona of Fat Man and fought evil with his newfound abilities. Along the way, he gained a teenage sidekick of Tin Man, who could coat himself in tin because of magic, and Fat Man's adventures led him to become the temporary king of Octagonia, a title obtained by spending $25,000, oblivious to the actual nature of the acquisition. If you're gonna be called Fat Man the Human Flying Saucer and your only power is to turn into a flying saucer and you're other than that just rich? Weird. But ultimately, in at number 2, Doorman. Dermar Davis, an ordinary American youth, experienced a personal tragedy when his mother passed away during his college years. After completing his education, Dermar responded to Dr. Immortal's call for costumed adventurers to form a team, leading him to join the Great Lakes Avengers. As a mutant with a remarkable teleportation ability, he became an invaluable asset to the team, providing them with stealthy entrances and surprising attacks by creating openings into almost any structure. And the reason that this is weird is because, like, yeah, sure, he's a mutant, but a mutant that can become a door? That's weird even by mutant mutant standards. There's a dude covered in eyeballs, for God's sakes. Doorman is a class 10 teleporter, okay, and if you're confused as to what that means, his body is a portal to the Dark Force dimension, allowing for people or items to pass through him and walk through any solid object that the Doorman is standing against. When creating a door through an object, Doorman is often surrounded by floating black spheres that create an outline of his body and like on the opposite side of any object, so they kind of know where they're coming through. But becoming a mutant that turns into doors? Yeah. And finally, in at number 1, Hindsight Lad. Initially met with skepticism by the other new warriors, Hindsight Lad proved his value when he rescued the team from the clutches of the Poison Memories. Utilizing Speedball's address book, he teamed up with the Night Thrasher to mount a successful rescue mission wherein the core members were captured and sent through time by the Sphinx. With the original new warriors missing, Hindsight Lad and Bandit formed a new team of heroes called the New Warriors. Carlton LaForge, a computer nerd and misfit, discovered his neighbor Robbie Baldwin's secret identity as Speedball during an apartment crisis caused by Darkling's Dark Force. Carlton, a superhero enthusiast with no powers, demanded to join the team or he would expose Robbie. Reluctantly, Speedball and the New Warriors agreed, and Carlton officially became Hindsight Lad, who has no powers except the power of hindsight, being able to look back and say what they could have done differently. And that's why he's number fucking 1. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, click the video that's popping up on screen now. Jeez, this was a weird one. Is that too meta?